You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Jeff McNeil, because he could be a real difference maker in this series and the rest of the Mets run. It was awesome that he was in the building, got to celebrate with his teammates for this team clinching at home. That was an awesome moment for everyone there. And Jeff McNeil, while he's polarizing to some because his performance certainly at the beginning of this year was not great, and at times he doesn't help himself with, the frustrations that he can have boil over on the field when he gets out. But still at his core, Jeff McNeil is a homegrown Met who is a multi-time All-Star, has had a lot of good moments in a Mets uniform. He was a big part of this team at the beginning of the second half where some other guys are really struggling in the lineup. Jeff McNeil, outside of Francisco Lindor, was the Mets' best hitter for a stretch. So he really was a key figure in getting the Mets to this point, and getting him back only makes this team better. I know Luis Angel Acuna got a cult following with his amazing week helping fill in for Francisco Lindor. But if you think Luis Angel Acuna is a better player than Jeff McNeil today, I'm sorry. That's just not true. Acuna has gotten 2 at-bats in this playoff run. He struck out both times. I think Luis Angel Acuna earned his World Series ring if the Mets are fortunate enough to get those 8 more victories based on what he did in that week replacing Lindor when the Mets went 6-1. He played out of his mind. It was amazing to see. That's a chapter in the championship DVD again if the Mets get there. But Acuna is not going to be a difference maker in the upcoming playoff games. Jeff McNeil could be. And I really want to break down what some of the other guys have done offensively so far, because when your team is winning in the playoffs, it feels like everybody is contributing. It's not exactly the case. If you actually look up and down the lineup, there's a lot of Mets who haven't fared that well offensively. And the first one that surprised me was Tyrone Taylor. In my eyes, he's given the Mets great at-bats, and I still think he is. And I don't know if I would say, go with the outfield of Jeff McNeil in left, Brandon Nimmo in center, and Starlin Marte in right. Actually, I don't think I would do that, because I just believe that having Tyrone Taylor in center field and keeping Nimmo where he's comfortable in left, it just makes your pitchers better. And so I don't think I'd sacrifice that much defense for offense. With that said, if the Mets are struggling offensively and Tyrone Taylor through the first 2 games of the series is 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts, that is a card you can pull. And so far in the playoffs, Tyrone Taylor is 2 for 23. He's got a 130 batting average, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts, 167 on base percentage, only 1 double. And then he has scored 3 runs, but he hasn't necessarily been a great at-bat or a great bat in the lineup, even though at times it does feel like he's given the Mets some pretty solid at-bats. The results have not been there. Harrison Bader's 1 for 7. You add Jeff McNeil, that allows you more roster flexibility. Maybe you start Tyrone Taylor, and in a big spot, you put Jeff McNeil into pinch hit, and you could always, sub out Starlin Marte after that potential inning and have McNeil shift to right, Bader to center. It just gives your team so many more options. So I really could see McNeil factoring into that outfield mix in a pretty big way. Also, he could get some starts from Jose Iglesias. Now, on the surface, you'd say, man, you can't take OMG out of the lineup. You can't take Candelita out. He's been unbelievable, right? He was great in September, had that amazing hitting streak. In the playoffs, he's 6 for 29. He's hitting 207, 233 on base. He's drawn 1 walk, 3 RBIs. He's still very good. He should be in there against left-handed pitching. He should absolutely be there for all of those potential at-bats. And I still think he should start these games for the most part, but Jeff McNeil might be a better bat in these series. You really don't know how they're going to progress. There could be some really bad matchups. I don't know what Jose Iglesias' numbers are against Dylan Cease, for example, but maybe Jose Iglesias is 0 for 12 with 11 strikeouts against Cease in his career. Again, we'll find those out as we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of these series. But again, Jeff McNeil gives you a potential better option. Also, lately, we have seen the Mets sub Mark Vientos out for defense late in games. And the problem is that puts Acuna in the lineup. Now, if you're going to sub Vientos out and slide Iglesias to third, if you want to make that call, and I would actually argue the Mets should just roll with Vientos. I think the defense has been good enough, and you never know with the playoff game, and I would not want my best hitter out of the lineup just for defense. But if you do continue to go that route, at least it's Jeff McNeil instead of Acuna, right? Going down the line of other Mets, Jesse Winker is 2 for 9 with a huge home run and a huge triple, 3 RBIs. He's gotten on base at like a 460 clip. I think Jesse Winker should continue to get run. JD Martinez, 4 for 14, all 4 hit singles, but 2 walks, getting on base at a 375 clip, hitting 286. If the Mets played the Dodgers, I want to see JD in the lineup because he's very comfortable in that ballpark. Had one of his best seasons last year as a Dodger. So I think you're still going to get him in there. But again, McNeil gives you some other options. Starling Marte, I would say play him every game. And I'm not going to really push off of that too much. But I will note, I was surprised looking at the stats. He's 4 for 20. That's not necessarily the batting average you would expect, considering, how much run he's got and how many big hits it seemed like he has. He has 5 RBIs, though. So all those hits have been big ones. He's drawn 3 walks. I still want Marte in the lineup, but with Jeff McNeil playing in the Arizona Fall League for the next couple of days, and I don't think I said that yet, Major League Baseball did accept the Mets petition to allow him to play in those games. So he's going to play Friday and Saturday to get ready for being added to the roster on Sunday. He's going to play in second base and right field, and that's kind of an indication on how his versatility can help the Mets, whether that's subbing in for Starling Marte late in the game, giving you a better bat still, but still, better defense out there, or if that's just maybe starting in right field over Starling Marte. There's a bad matchup, putting Marte on the bench, or if they want to DH Marte and play McNeil in right. That's another option they have. Just since we're talking about the stats, though, where this Mets lineup has thrived has been their top 4 hitters. Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, Francisco Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo have all had a really good postseason so far, particularly Pete Alonso. 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 7 walks to 8 strikeouts, 433 on-base percentage. Pete has been great and locked in. Mark Vientos hitting 429, 467 on base, 714 slug, 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 12 hits, and 28 at-bats. He's been sensational. Lindor hasn't hit for the highest average, 259 average, but he has 3 doubles and a homer, and he's getting on base at a 382 clip. Obviously had the biggest swing of the playoffs so far with that grand slam. 6 RBIs, 6 runs scored. Then you have Nimmo, who is giving you great at-bats. I think he might have a huge series in him because his numbers overall are good. They're not great. He's hitting 269, 387 on base, 385 slug, but he's only struck out 5 times, and I just feel like he's due for some big moments because Alonso has had the big moment. Lindor's had a couple. Vientos has had a couple. Brandon Nimmo, he had the 2-run homer that was critical. Was it 2-run or 3-run? I don't even remember now. In that Braves game to get into the playoffs, but he hasn't had as many big postseason moments yet. He's been very good, but there has been, the hit before Lindor against Devin Williams. That was a good moment, but like where the game ends because Nimmo hit the home run, we haven't seen that yet. I'm excited because potentially that could come in this series. When you look at the Mets' strength against these other teams, I think their bench is significantly deeper than either the Padres or the Dodgers. I think the bottom third of their lineup is going to be better as well. When you have Francisco Alvarez batting 9th and the potential spark plug he is, I'm sorry if you're comparing him to Kyle Higashioka of the Padres. It's just a different threat, I feel, in that 9-hole. I like the Mets' depth in either of these series. The ability for Carlos Mendoza to play matchups, plug different guys in at different times. I think that's going to be a huge strength the Mets have in this series, regardless of the competition.